Yes.
Got to be close here. Call the meeting of the September 21st meeting of APC to order. Eric, would you like to call the roll, please?
Jackson Bogan, Larry Leverance,
Here.
Carla Snodgrass, Gary Schroeder,
Here.
Jerry Reynolds, Greg Jones,
Here.
Bob Metzger, Diana Looper, Vicki Pearl,
Present.
Michelle Dennis, Tom Murtaugh, Perry Brown, Tracy Brown,
Here.
Jason Demkowski, Lisa Dullum,
Here.
Kathy Parker,
Here.
Jody Hamilton, quorum present.
Thank you, sir. Briefing session. Thank you, sir. Approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the August 17th, 2022 public hearing as submitted.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We have no new business. We will go into public hearing, and let me read my statement here. For those of you unfamiliar with our procedures, the Commission would like you to know the following. When we hear a request to subdivide land, we are only concerned as to whether the actual drawing showing the division into lots meets the technical requirements of our ordinance. The question of appropriateness has already been determined. Anyone wishing to make comments or provide us with information regarding any subdivision petitions will be given the opportunity to do so. When we are hearing a request for a change in zoning, we are trying to determine if the new zone being requested and the uses allowed in that zone are appropriate to that property and supported by the comprehensive plan. With each case being heard, our staff will present its report. Then the person requesting the rezone will be given an opportunity to speak. Following that, those of you wishing to speak in favor of the rezone will be recognized, and then those of you who wish to oppose it will have a turn. This will be your only time to speak. The person requesting the action will be allowed a rebuttal. Plan Commission members will then ask questions and finally vote. Please limit your statements to no more than 5 minutes. We ask that you not repeat what others before you have already said. We are a 17-member body. A majority of 17 is 9. Regardless of how many commissioners are actually present, at least 9 votes in favor or 9 votes against are required for our action to be official. If fewer than 9 of us agree to either approve or disapprove an action, that case must be heard again next month. Our vote on a request to subdivide is final. Our vote on a request to rezone serves as a recommendation to the appropriate City Council, Town Council, or County Commissioners who must ultimately decide on changes in zoning. When addressing the Commission, please state your name and address for the record. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. If you need to make a call, please step out of the room before using your phone. All exhibits presented to the Commission become the property of the Commission.
I move that there be incorporated into the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and become part of the evidence at such hearing the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Plan Commission, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report and recommendations on the applications to be heard this evening, and responses from the checkpoint agencies.
I second.
Before we vote, let the record show that Mr. Bogan is now present. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I move to hear and vote on Resolution 2022-04.
I second.
Mr. Hiddle.
Good evening, David Hiddle with the Area Plan Commission, here with the first item before you, which is a proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan for Tippecanoe County. This is, I think, the first time you've had one of these in 2 years. The last one, I was just talking to Ryan, was probably the West Lafayette Downtown Plan Amendment, which was 2020. So for some of you, this might be a new thing. And this is an amendment to the comprehensive plan to fold into the comprehensive plan what we're calling the Stockwell Town Plan. Just a little bit of background on what the comprehensive plan is. It is really sort of a quilt of 20 different documents that together account for future land use recommendations for all of the county. So like I just said, West Lafayette had a new one for their downtown. There's a couple other neighborhood and corridor-specific comprehensive plans in West Lafayette. Dayton has a plan that dates back quite a bit that they are currently updating. Battleground has a plan that dates back quite a bit, which they will soon be updating. Clarks Hill has a plan from the 90s, and then most of the rest of the area of the county is incorporated into a broad plan, which dates back to 1981. So the comprehensive plan that was dictating what happens in Stockwell, guides Stockwell's future, again, dates back to 1981. Ideally, comp plans for any given area or space are updated every 15 to 25 years, depending on circumstances. So it's well overdue. We have a little bit of a backlog in terms of doing this planning, this comprehensive planning, and one of the reasons we wanted to start with Stockwell is it's a relatively constrained area. And it's interesting and unique in that it has a sewer system with only using 25% capacity. And in a county where housing is in short supply, there's a lot that makes Stockwell and its surroundings a very attractive environment for builders. We're hearing and learning of residential pressures in the area, and we just felt that the old 40-year-old, 42-year-old comp plan was not adequate to deal with any pressure, any residential development were it to come, and want to be brought to Stockwell. So we convened a meeting a little under a year ago, met with 40 to 50 Stockwell stakeholders and residents, and just asked if this is something that they are interested in doing, and we got a pretty strong yes. So this is almost a year in the making. We convened a stakeholder group, or rather a steering committee, and then throughout the course of the last year we've had 2 large public meetings and then almost monthly steering committee meetings. And we got a lot of input, got a lot of feedback. From all that emerged one predominant theme, which is that people in Stockwell like Stockwell pretty much like it is, didn't want to have too much change. There was actually kind of a group that was steadfast, let's not change anything ever, in any degree, ever. And then another group which said, growth is probably going to happen, let's allow it. And then we kind of met in the middle with a compromise that I think in the end was satisfactory to everybody. It said that let's allow for modest growth, but let's ensure that it's the growth that we want. In other words, growth that is compatible with the town character. There's not a lot of post-World War II development in Stockwell. It was mostly developed in the earlier part of the 1900s and the late 1800s. So it's small lots, compact urban form, very walkable, a very traditional older downtown and old housing stock. So there was concern that anything that might come in that's new would be dramatically different than that, and that wasn't necessarily the desire of the town. So we ended up with really, within the plan document itself, really the meat and potatoes element is the land use plan, which is here. Well, let me go back just a little bit. This is the study area, and you can see Stockwell concentrated here with the street network in the center, left center. And we incorporated a large study area because not that Stockwell is going to grow or expand its footprint in any significant way, but it made sense that this new plan should incorporate land use recommendations for the larger area. So there was very strong desire to keep the green belt that surrounds it, the agricultural belt, to not allow for or encourage a lot of new residential development in the form of traditional subdivisions to take up that area, which would erode the character. So the recommendation that we made for the bulk of this area is for what you see in the green here, which is agricultural. So it's the same recommendation that was in place 40 years ago with the original plan, but because it's been re-vetted and re-evaluated and sort of anew made as the recommendation, it carries a little bit more weight. So if a developer wants to come and develop in the place recommended for agriculture and the town doesn't like it, and staff says the comp plan is not in favor of it, well, we're not leaning on a 42-year-old comp plan, we're leaning on a 1, 2, 3, 5-year-old comp plan. So it gives it a little bit more weight, a little bit more assurance to the town that it's not subject to any sort of explosive growth. Additionally, with the keeping along the theme of keeping the town similar in character, there's desire for something you'll be seeing down the road soon, which is a very minimal set of architectural guidelines. Those will only seek to accomplish a few different things. With regards to the handful of old buildings downtown, it will encourage any new buildings built in the downtown core to be similar in terms of scale, not to plop a strip mall or something that would be very out of character in the middle of town, which is pretty clearly against the stakeholders' wishes. And then in terms of residential development, there is a call not to allow for garage-dominant houses. So think of a snout house, back when cookie-cutter subdivisions were being put up left and right, where you see the garage and then right next to it there's a window and you guess that there's a person living there in addition to a car. That wasn't the desire. So we wanted that. Old houses have front porches. There was a desire to require a front porch of some sort for new development. And then also, back to the cookie cutter theme, something that would discourage architectural monotony. So if you're a subdivision developer and you build a house type A here, we would like to see type B or type C next to it so that you don't have type A, type A, type A, type A. So it's a little bit of a safeguard against, again, architectural monotony. So those would be really the three elements of the architectural guidelines, which will be an overlay zoning district, which will be coming back to the Plan Commission in the coming months. We had incredible participation. The first large public meeting, we had attendance of probably 140, 130, which is maybe close to half the town's population, which is beyond anything you could ever hope for. And then the second one, which is more of an open house format, was about half that. So still a great turnout. And we really incorporated a lot of their feedback. When we first came in, our recommendation as staff was to look at areas that we thought might be ripe for residential growth and then to propose those. But the clear pushback from a majority of the town residents was that there was just too much area that was recommended for residential growth. So we cut that back significantly. And what you see here in yellow are areas that are already zoned for residential development, and many of them platted. And what we added was this area here, which we're not recommending must be residential. It's crosshatched agricultural and residential. It is currently agricultural. The idea is that if there was a desire to build a new subdivision in the area, we could continue the existing town grid this way, so that instead of sort of inserting cul-de-sacs and curvilinear streets and a whole different aesthetic into the town, we could continue the grid, continue the smaller lots, just to this modest extent westward, which would make sense. It would be directly south of the existing elementary school, and it kind of, that met with I think, satisfaction to the large degree of the people who are involved with the process. So the part that's recommended for any sort of residential expansion is really quite modest. I think that's all that we have. If the recommendation that you make with regards to this then will be carried to the county commissioners, and they have the ultimate say in this matter at their next regularly scheduled hearing, unless you continue it for some reason. I think we have a few people from the town here who I hope are interested in speaking to this, but I'll answer any questions you might have in the meantime.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hiddle at this point?
I'll know. Kathy Lind, who is on vacation right now, led this project, and it was the first one we've done for a small town in a long time, and she did a fantastic job. And if you're able to read through the report that she put together, I just think it was very well done, very well done. I just want to give her credit for that.
I do have a question. What's the difference between, or the definition between low and medium density?
Low density is going to be a single-family development more in keeping with what the ordinance currently requires. So back when the town was built, they would have been very narrow lots, very compact development, again, pre-World War II housing, much smaller. Usually the houses themselves were much smaller, two-story. And that's indicated by what you see on the map there in orange. So it's all single-family, but the older typology provides for a much greater density than the newer. So in the yellow, we're allowing for larger lots, again, meeting essentially what the subdivision ordinance would require today.
There's new development that's going on Academy Street. That's what I'm asking the question.
Yeah, there's actually, as you can see here, a lot of the lots in the yellow in the south end of town were platted, 100-plus years ago, so they didn't need to do anything. It's already zoned for residential. It's already split. So they just came in and filed for their permits. But, yeah, we're expecting that interest in development will probably be occurring on the south side of town.
Is the rest of the big, where you had the first slide up there with the yellow line around it, outside of what is in the town land use, that's all agriculture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we cropped this so that it would make sense
Sure.
on 8.5 by 11. But, yeah, everything else on the outside is recommended for agriculture. And, in fact, a lot of that is designated as prime farmland. So it's the agricultural designation that is pretty much limited to crop production.
Mm-hmm. Right. Any other questions?
Is there any interest right now in developing areas around there? What's the current interest in developing around?
Nothing in the pipeline?
Nothing in the pipeline, okay.
We get the occasional phone call, but there's nothing in the pipeline right now. Well, as Vicki mentioned, there's some piecemeal development, some individual permits. There's actually a small-scale developer from the area that's built maybe 4 or 5 small homes, but we have not got anything close to the pipeline, not even in the inquiry stage yet as far as a new subdivision.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone from the audience wishing to comment on this proposal?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bob Schoaf, and I live at 7002 Monroe Street in Stockwell. I was on the steering committee. For some reason, they selected me. But when we had the first meeting in November, well, we had the first meeting in November, and as you see, the map that's showing here, the steering committee had no input on the area to be checked or to be looked at. And in fact, when I showed up at the meeting, I was a little distraught because we had no input in this, had no idea where it was going to be, and the APC had already decided where it was going to be. We had the meeting, and we had some people show up, and the reason they showed up is because my wife and I and a neighbor, Jeannie Ensinger, out of our own pocket, spent a little over $400 purchasing materials, information, advertising, when the meeting was going to be held, where it was going to be held, and the time. And that's the reason why, and we sent it to each box holder in the city so that everyone had an idea of what was going on. We had the meeting, and it was a strange meeting. We were divided up into groups and then asked a series of questions, and I can't find the darn thing now. But ask a series of questions, and at the end of the meeting, they added up the total of what the comments were from the different citizens, and basically what they said was they wanted to be left alone. They wanted to leave the area the way it is and leave the town, not be told anybody from outside coming in and telling the town people and the property owners what they could and couldn't do with their property. They feel secure in where they're at. My previous home was in DeHart Street in West Lafayette, and I was unhappy with living in the city, which I'd lived in for quite a few years, and moved to Stockwell because of the opportunity it afforded me and my family to be out and away from the inner cities, and it was a little more peaceful and with the scenery and such around it. The people there are friendly, they're happy. It's a small town. He was right, there's no World War II building hurriedly like National Homes up in the north end of Lafayette. But the people want to be left alone. We would like to have, I'm speaking for other people, one comment in the meeting was they needed somebody to be on the opposition as opposed to presenting this to you. We'd like to have it stay the same as it is now. We don't need any new land use reform. If you take a look at the other maps which show the proposed form, that one, and the one previous to the older land use map, you'll see that the yellow up on the left, on the top left, and it's striped, that area will almost equal what's already in the town itself. And there's 160 platted parcels in the city that can be used for development. We don't need all of that farmland, which is yellow up there, and in the middle, it's like bricks stacked up, that's also farmland. And the area down at the bottom with the stripes is partial farmland with a building on it. It used to have a windmill, but they tore that down. But we just really don't need it. I mean, it's a small town. The people are there. And the unintended consequences of the development and the building developments and such, you can readily see if you go to different areas in Lafayette. It's just too crowded. It's going to cause a problem with the population in the school. If that happens, then the taxes and the property are going to have to be increased to pay for the new school buildings and the management for the children. It's going to have to be happening with teachers and everything else. So the unintended consequences haven't been really looked at. And I'm sure that you guys can, in your mind, see what can possibly happen to the city. The downtown area really doesn't need much more development as far as commercial or business. It's not designed for it. We had a restaurant there that recently closed down. The population density of Stockwell is not large enough to really support any businesses, any banks, anything that requires people to come in and out. The restaurant went out of business. We have a grocery store, which is, I believe, just barely making it right now. But in Lafayette and West Lafayette, when you have village pantries, and if it's in an area that has a substantial amount of money in which they can afford things, the people will go to the grocery store and buy their food. If they can't, they'll take a taxi. The poor people take a taxi and go to the VP. Well, the VPs in West Lafayette and some of the other ones, which had a high amount of income, went out of business. They just couldn't stay in business because the people who actually had money would go to town and buy their groceries at a discount. And that's basically the way Stockwell is. I mean, they're not stupid people, they're intelligent people, and we just ask to be alone. And we appreciate it, and we just leave it like it is now. And if somebody wants to put a different version of what's on the area plan, they come to see you and get a special exemption. I mean, I did it for my mother-in-law, and at that time I had to give 2 3/4 acres in order to build the house and have the legal ability to do it. And I'm sure that anybody else can do the same thing and come back and trust your judgment on whether or not it should be done or not be done. And I don't think people should have a big hand put on them and told them, this is what you're going to do, this is what's available. And as I asked the director before, if you push the land use platform in front and it's accepted now, it's, from what I understand and was advised that it's true, it makes it easier to have a change in the zoning. Once you have the land use form in front of you, then the zoning can come back, and it's easier than if you try to rezone something that's already zoned. Now, that may be true, may not be, but that was the answer I received. As far as being the steering committee, we didn't have a consensus on any issue at all, not one. If you've been to Menards or some grocery store in which you go shopping, there's a grocery cart, some of them have a plastic grocery cart, in which the people put their child in, and they have a little plastic steering wheel, and they push it around. That's what we were. APC put most all this in here. We had no consensus of opinion as to voting. We didn't get a chance to pick on the area map. We didn't have any input on this. They would come in and put on a slideshow and talk to us about what they wanted, and we had to listen. Yes, sir?
Yeah, we're about 5.5 minutes in, and I
I'm sorry.
started late. I'm not sure he had announced the 5 minutes.
Yes, I did. I heard that, but
Okay.
I don't have a watch on me.
Understood.
I'm sorry.
Here's your watch. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak? Go ahead, sir.
Richard Laughlin, 9311 Yorktown Street, Stockwell. I've been a lifelong resident of Stockwell. Stockwell was dying for years. Houses that deteriorate, they can't rebuild because of sewer. We were thankful enough to get the sewer in there so we can now rebuild houses. Are filling some of these lots. As said, all the yellow on the map there is already plotted. So technically, with or without this plan, people could come in and build things on there. I appreciate the work that's been done on this plan because it does give us a little more say, I feel, as what can and can't come in. We do want to keep Stockwell small. We want to keep it like it is. But if houses don't come in, we'd like them to look decent and not little cookie cutters. I think Dave and his committee that worked on this plan, because I think it's a good plan, and I think you should adapt it to the Tippecanoe plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name's Michael Bickett. I live at 6800 Monroe Street. I just wanted to say I agree with these two fine gentlemen. What is already platted, I feel is more than enough for us. The expansion, like in the striped area and everything that has been added, I don't really care for that expansion, the newer like subdivision areas. But I just wanted to say I agree with the other two gentlemen. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Hi, Jamie Cochran, 9008 Commercial Street. I don't really have a problem with the plan, except that, like, my house is within this red zone, and later on, I'm doing a rezoning thing. But when the plan was submitted, I have a problem with the red downtown area. In Stockwell, we don't really have a downtown. We're just little farmers and happy little town. So the only problem with the plan that I had is, like, where my house is business. And even if you put a business there, it's not viable, no parking, no things like that. But I did petition to get it changed with the plan to residential. My neighbor got changed to residential. I'm already a house there. So that would be my only problem with it, is the business downtown area is not really a viable thing. That's it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Sure, barely see over this. Hi, my name's Medea Bickett. I live at 6800 Monroe Street in Stockwell, and I've lived there now for 3 years. I was a part of the little bit of the steering committee and putting this together, and I think it is a great plan. I also agree that I don't really support expansion outside of the yellow that is already plotted. I live actually near where the striped area is, so I oppose anything happening there. But I do think that it's a good thing for us to have a plan in place so that if somebody does come in and want to build, that we have a little bit of a say. And that's really all I want
Okay.
to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none. Any other questions from the commission?
Can you show me what the current zoning looks like? Is it, I mean, there's currently, yeah. How does this change what they can do today, I guess, is my question. They're saying they want it to stay the same, so how is this different than what they have today?
Right. In the past, with other plans, we have, after having the comprehensive plan adopted, then initiated mass rezonings to meet with the plan. So we're not doing that in this case, because we want there to be a public hearing for any rezoning if it takes place, next year, 5 years, 10 years down the road. Circumstances could change. The town wants to have a say in whether those, presumably residential rezonings on the outside of town, get approved or not. So we're not supporting any rezonings in tandem with this adoption, with the exception of a couple spot zonings in the middle. For example, there's some multifamily rezonings in the middle of town that don't make any sense, that we want to convert back to single family, and everybody was supportive of that. So there's some sort of corrective rezonings in the middle. But for the most part, what is currently shown as yellow is already zoned for residential. The difference is what the couple that spoke earlier, they live right here, and they look out over a pleasant agricultural pasture and don't want to see this changed. Response from others was that this, if there is going to be growth, makes sense that it would be contiguous with what's already there. It would make sense that we kind of continue an existing street grid here and then limit it. So we're not talking about a massive area that would be developed, but potentially just a small area. In addition to that, the architectural guidelines would impose upon the developers that they develop in a style similar to what's existing. So, in a sense, that makes it a little bit less likely that it would be developed, because there's more constraints, more requirements, more standards to meet. But what's shown as yellow is generally already zoned for residential. And again, we're not going to be enacting any proactive rezonings after that, except for the corrective ones in the middle.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the area that's hatched today is zoned agricultural.
Right.
So they are entitled to build some single-family houses there as long as they have the proper acreage? Am I understanding that right?
Well, if anybody wanted to develop this, they'd have to come and get a rezoning. They'd have to, I mean, they'd assemble whatever area they need for what they want to build here, but they'd have to rezone it. This is all, again, this is all future recommendation. This is not zoning. This is currently actually zoned agricultural.
But you can build a house in an agricultural, no, that's.
Yeah, on one.
Right, but she's saying what's the requirement, if I own that piece of ground, I can put a house on there because it's zoned agricultural. I can't put many homes.
Right, one.
Without coming back and getting approved.
One house per lot. And it's.
But then you can split it up 4 times, right? From the grandfather, the original,
The tract.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay.
it's the same way you could develop
Right,
any
any
agricultural
agricultural
property
land.
anywhere. You
Yeah.
can do that there now, yes. But
Okay.
to build a subdivision, you would have to rezone it. And we're not sponsoring that rezoning. We're leaving it as is.
Mr. Hiddle, point of clarification. I'm reading that the steering committee members received and adopted, the final steering committee adopted this plan.
Right.
But Mr. Schoaf said that there was not a consensus on this map or the plan, so I'm a little confused there
Sure.
on what the consensus is, and was this map adopted by the steering committee?
Yeah, well, they don't adopt. There is consensus. We had a number of meetings, and the map evolved during the course of those meetings. I've explained at every turn to the best of my ability to Mr. Schoaf, as have other committee members, answers to his questions, and I'm not sure if he's unwilling or unable to understand those answers, but I think he's been kind of a pack of one in terms of a naysayer in this process. So I hesitate to go into detail to answer each one of his remarks, which I could. But yes, there was consensus from the steering committee that this is the plan to go forward with.
Vicki? Yeah, one of you.
Mr. Hiddle, my understanding is that this would actually afford more protection for the town versus if we just left it the same. I guess I'm a little confused because I don't think anybody is wanting to say let's develop Stockwell and make it a metropolis. Right. It's saying if you're going to build a home here, here's how we'd like it to look, and you've got architectural things, you went through them at the very beginning. Am I understanding that correct, that this actually lays out a little groundwork for, hey, if somebody's going to come in, we're not going to let them build a 10,000 square foot home next to, or the desire is to not build a 10,000 square foot home next to a 1,400 square foot home in the middle of town?
Right. Well, we were careful on the caps that we were imposing in the architectural guidelines because people weren't necessarily against large lot homes. They were against the kinds of things that you saw, again, that maybe proliferated 20 years ago with snout houses, houses that just have no character and kind of stand in jarring contrast to what they have there now, which has a lot of character. So we were pretty discreet in terms of what we're including in these architectural guidelines. We're not going into exterior materials. We're not saying you can't have vinyl. We're not saying anything like that. It's just these, front porch, don't have a garage that's bigger than the rest of the house, and let's avoid the cookie cutter complex. Let's have a little architectural variety. So they're not going to preclude a big house on a big lot. You can still do that. So that's the case, yes. As far as the other protection, I just think it's a natural fact that if your plan is 1 year old or 2 years old or 5 years old, it carries a little bit more weight than if your plan is 43 years old, which is what the current plan is. They accomplish very much the same thing. They say that Stockwell is a small town and everything around it should remain agricultural. But again, having sort of vetted it and said that again in 2022, is going to carry more weight when a rezoning comes next year, or the year after, or the year after, than if it had only been said most recently in 1981. So to the extent that the plan is new, it would carry more weight. Thank you. I'm sorry? Yeah, it is an update. Yeah, it is an update.
I have a question on the comment about there was a couple that are multi-use that are going to go to single-family or something along that line. Can you clarify that? Does that get approved with this plan?
Well, multi-use to single-family,
You made a comment that there was a couple spot zones.
yes.
So my question is, if we pass this today, those spot zones, say it was a R2, now go to single-family?
No, those are
Or
going
whatever
to,
the example would be.
those are going to come through as actual rezoning petitions, like soon, within the next month or two. And those were just small lots that are zoned R3 for multifamily. We don't know why they're zoned R3. We couldn't find a history on why they're zoned R3, but they're zoned R3. And we're going to, with everybody agreed on this, rezone them back to R1 or R1.
But there are one homes sitting on those lots.
Right.
Or they're vacant lots or something along that.
Right.
We're not taking and making something become a variance issue or a non-conforming
Non-conforming.
use.
Right,
Okay,
right. They're very much corrective.
okay.
They're, yeah, and I think they were all R3. There may be 3 different lots that are R3 that would be going back to R1.
So then to the lady's point, was there other homes in the red zone that should have been included in that?
Yeah, Jackie's coming to you with a rezoning petition later tonight. She's talking about this area here. This is Commercial Street. It used to be the Commercial Street. Now it's mostly undeveloped, and it has a post office on this end and a couple homes in the middle. We actually had all of this red and then changed it to pink to accommodate what she was hoping to do. She owns a house, she owns an empty lot, and the clear long-term intent there is to have those be residential. By making it pink and saying it should be mixed use rather than commercial, we're saying that residential in the middle of the block would be okay as a long-term use. So she met with the steering committee, made her case, and there was, a general consensus. We were, as staff, we were a little bit less favorable towards it, but the steering committee was more favorable towards it, so we kind of acquiesced and said, okay, let's go from red, strictly commercial, to pink, mixed use, which could accommodate the residential that Jackie is hoping to do later. So that was kind of a concession from staff and from a couple of the committee members, too.
And so Jamie's coming forward with that tonight, and so this won't affect her request?
Right, yeah, this isn't adopted yet.
Okay.
It's on deck, but it's not adopted. You'll weigh her request in light of the current plan.
So the other parts that are in the downtown corridor that are red, I'm just wondering, is there others that are in her situation that makes me nervous?
Yeah, what's red now is kind of the downtown core. So there's a couple brick buildings right here, as Mr. Schoaf noted, the former cafe, and then the trustee's office, and then an older brick building south of that, and then the grocery store is right here. This area is vacant. This area up here has an old post office on it.
Well, I guess I'm thinking there's a home in the areas where I'm not talking about commercial, or like a true downtown, but like in her situation where there's already a home that's in this corridor.
Yeah, that's the pink. There's already, I think, 2 homes, a new build and then an old house in this pink area here. There's some empty lots, and then her desire, she owns a couple of them, is to build another house. And ultimately, that's not a hill we're going to die on. We think that's not an unreasonable request.
So to clarify, the others that are in red, there are no other homes that are in the red zone.
I think that's correct. They're active or inactive commercial or industrial buildings, or the post office. Yeah, I believe that's the case.
You have a,
There's this little tiny red blip here, which
Right.
is actually,
That's what I'm like,
right,
what's
that's
that?
what I was going to ask about.
that's an older, I think it's historically been an auto repair shop. It seems to have functioned well. Nobody has concerns with it, so they are comfortable leaving this as a red recommendation.
Mr. Hiddle, sorry to belabor this point. I really want a point of distinct clarification here, that the steering committee voted to approve the plan to send to the APC for this meeting?
It's not, it doesn't operate on a voting standard. There's conversation and there's arrival at a consensus. I don't know, so there's no tally that says it was 11-1 or 12-2 or anything like that.
I'm just trying to gauge the support in Stockwell for this plan that we're seeing today.
I think it's broad-based.
How many people were on the committee, or how was that decided, I guess? Was that a town thing that decided the committee, or how was the committee put together?
When we organized the very first meeting, which was to get, the mandate to go ahead and do this, Lynn Beck, who's the Laramie Township trustee, and then a few other folks, Tom Reynolds, who's a landholder in the area, Dan Harkleroad, who owned the cafe at the time, helped to identify, 20 to 30 people who would be considered Stockwell stakeholders. We had the meeting. From that crew, we asked who would be interested in being in a steering committee. Some people said yes. We invited them. We invited others. At first, we had a deficit of actual town residents, and so we made it a point to invite other town residents as part of the steering committee. So that was kind of an organic process. It's not an incorporated town, so there's no elected official for the town. The only one is the township trustee, Mr. Beck. No, at the end of the day, I have confidence in saying that there is consensus and broad consensus from the town to have this thing adopted. If you'd like to continue it so we can in some way bring more in or do something to give you better assurances of that, I have no problem with that. But I have no problem saying that there was as much support as you would hope for adoption of a plan like this.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
David, I have a question for you quickly. In tonight's document, page number 18 for this action, center of the page, there are 3 bullet points there, and the third bullet point begins with the creation of a new committee or a designation of an existing committee. How do you see that? How do you see the work of that committee going and the interaction with government and specifically zoning issues? Is it likely to be the same committee, or?
It's up to the town going forward. That's our recommendation, just because there is no elected town council or body that could fulfill that role. Our thought in talking, down the road was that Keep Stockwell Beautiful, which is a very active, very established organization that already meets monthly, that already has their hands occasionally in zoning matters, would be a great candidate to fulfill that role. And so Priscilla, who is the director of that, we've kind of talked about it taking over that role at some point, but in the meantime, we've said, call us whenever something comes up where you need to mobilize, and we can help you, do that. The thought was that Keep Stockwell Beautiful might morph into that, either form that committee or just be that committee itself. It would be ad hoc in that there's not every month a zoning thing going on in Stockwell, so they wouldn't have to meet every month and have it on top of their mind at all times. It's probably something that would meet twice a year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. If not, you have a yellow ballot.
We have 11 votes recommending approval, 1 vote recommending denial. This case will proceed to county commissioners next month.
Thank you, Ryan.
I move to hear and vote on S 5091 Koinonia Ridge Subdivision Part 2, Major Preliminary.
I second.
Mr. Hiddle?
David Hiddle, Area Plan Commission. Here with S-5091 Koinonia Ridge Subdivision Part 2. It's a major preliminary subdivision. Habitat for Humanity is the petitioner, and the lot in question, right here in the middle, surrounded in red, is a 1.34 acre lot. It is zoned R1B. It was rezoned to R1B earlier this year. The proposal is to develop, and here's another look at the site, currently developed with a small old house which would be removed from the property, and then the major subdivision proposes 7 lots, 5 which would be accessed to the north off of Walker Court, and then 2 which would be accessed to the east off of Powder House Lane. This is, by the way, in the southwest part of Lafayette. This is Elston here, and then Powder House going north. The petitioner did get variances, a handful of variances from the subdivision ordinance. Those go not to the Plan Commission, but to the jurisdiction in which the property lies. In this case, they went to the City of Lafayette's Public Works Board, and those variances were approved kind of in standing with how they've typically handled subdivision variances. I think it was earlier this month, if not the month before. So those variances are approved. Otherwise, lot size and every other manner of the subdivision is met by this request, and so staff is recommending approval and would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative like to make a presentation?
Good evening. My name is Patrick Williams. I'm a civil engineer and land surveyor with T-Bird Design, 105 North 10th, Lafayette, 47901. So correct me if I'm wrong, the variances will not be voted on and approved here? Yeah, so last week they were, my understanding, they were recommended for approval. They were voted on and approved by the Board of Works last week, just to be clear. But no, I'm representing the petitioner. We agree with all of staff's comments, and we're here, requesting conditional primary approval. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Clarification, Mr. Hiddle, we have in front of us a variance ballot. Why do we have that?
I think the Board of Works was a recommendation to the APC, and are still asking for a final vote by the APC on those variance issues that they've already recommended.
That was my understanding as well. So if that's the case,
I apologize for the mix-up.
But do you agree?
Proceed.
Do you agree that's the way to do it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thanks.
if you need any clarification regarding those 2 variances, again, I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't want to.
All right, I have to figure out where I am here. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Any questions from the commission? Is there bonding?
Yes.
Is it on there?
Yes.
Yes.
I missed that. Okay. All right, so you have a variance ballot, and you have to do that. Do we do that first?
You sure can, absolutely.
All right, so let's do the variance ballot first. And there are two variances.
Have you mixed them in though? How do we keep it separate?
No, she's separating.
Okay.
Bring chocolate?
No chocolate.
Oh,
I didn't get chocolate. I can see it.
you were like,
Everybody had chocolate?
these are the next ones.
I saw it. Yeah. So there's an excuse lateness.
Did I miss one? Is there another one there? Okay.
Uh-oh. Screwed this one up.
Has? Yeah, I'm taking them both. If you've got them,
Commissioners sign
you'll
that.
need to,
Oh.
I'll come back and, any stragglers.
Sign on top.
No, they just print another one.
I'm used to one thing at a time.
All right, we have 12 votes approving the variance requests. Okay. And 12 votes recommending conditional approval,
Thanks, Ryan.
as well as bonding for all
Okay.
12. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go back to Stockwell.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2864, Jamie Cochran, NB to R1U.
Amanda.
Hello. So, yes, back to Stockwell, and I feel like we've already talked about this. There's not too much for me to say here. The petitioner is requesting a rezone from NB to R1U, 7 lots. It sounds like a lot, but keep in mind that these were platted in the 1800s, back when commercial businesses were teeny tiny little next door to each other lots. So, this area, as we talked about, historically was a business area, but for the last 100 years, there's been a house here. So this is kind of a legally non-conforming property that the petitioner is requesting R1U zoning to make her house conforming. I will let the petitioner speak to her future plans for the rest of the site. Keep in mind, too, that the R1U just to the north of this was rezoned just last year to allow the construction of a new residence. So as far as we're concerned, this area is, for now, going to be a residential area, not business. So we are in support of approving this request for the petitioner. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative like to make a presentation?
Why, hello again. Again, that's my house, the little line. I have my house and those tiny little slanted lots. My house has existed there. I've been in there for 10 years. I think it was built in the 1800s and then built on over the years before I bought it. I would just like it residential, because to me it doesn't make any sense as business, because as you can see, there wouldn't even be a place for a parking lot to put a business there or anything. And my plans for the future kind of go with their plans to bring more people to Stockwell, is so that my daughter can stay in Stockwell instead of moving out. I would like to build her house there, right next door to her mom, every parent's dream. So that's why I would like it rezoned as residential. And it's just kind of silly, in my opinion, I understand way back when Stockwell had a railroad and a blacksmith shop and everything, why it was business then, but now it doesn't serve that purpose. And with the lot next to me being rezoned for residential as well, and the house next door being built, it would kind of flow with that. But as it stands, if I don't get this rezoned, where the new house is, there used to be a house. That guy spent his life in Stockwell. He had a house fire, and he was forced out because it was zoned for business and they wouldn't let him rebuild his house. And if that happened to me, the exact same thing would happen. I would be forced out. I would not be allowed to rebuild my home in the same spot. So I would essentially own just a plot of land, and I also pay sewer bills on the extra land where there is nothing. So it's kind of frustrating. Let me use the sewer. So just for future, would like my daughter's house to go next door, would like to be able to use the sewer that I pay for, and would like to protect my family from a disaster. Should it happen, I'd be able to rebuild. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone in the audience would anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone opposed? Any questions from the board? Go right ahead.
Just for clarification, we're not combining the lots, right? It'll still remain
Correct.
separate? Okay.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Well, that leads me to another question, just for her sake. When I look up there, and I know the lines aren't always exactly as they're shown, so to her to be fully compliant, should the 3 lots become one that her house sits on?
Not necessarily. So just recently, an amendment to the UZO allowed structures to be built over lot lines if those lot lines have been owned by the same people
okay.
for a certain number of years.
I know,
Yeah.
I forgot. I don't remember what I did yesterday.
Right.
Okay.
That's why I didn't
Okay. I just wanted to make sure she was getting it all fixed at once if we needed to.
Sure. What was the number of people required, number of years? Because I only owned it for almost 2 years.
It's not the age of the house, it's the age of the flat.
Oh, okay.
Which is old.
Really old.
Yeah.
Very
It's
old.
old enough.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Everybody all right? Okay, you have a yellow ballot. We're going to separate you two.
That's why I like sitting over there.
I know.
Sorry about messing up your paper there, but I have a comment for you when we get done later.
No, you're. I have to remember that I screwed this up.
You didn't pick it up after I gave it to you. When you switched them out, I'm sorry.
Got it.
We've got 12 ballots recommending approval. Carry on to County Commissioners.
Thank you, Ryan.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2865, James D. Hall for Western Associates Incorporated, A to R1.
Ryan.
Okay. We're in Tippecanoe Township, north of Harrison and in the unincorporated county. We have an area here, obviously adjacent zoning. We've got some residential zoning, RE zoning. It's obviously residential development node around the schools. The floodplain area that you see has been certified, so this boundary is good in terms of the division between the two sites. Got some steep grades, obviously in the vicinity of the water course there, which is going to influence the development here. Looks like we've got a little notch into this potential subdivision here that's not joining the party. This is their proposed site plan. Obviously, it's not binding. It's just a concept. We're, obviously in favor of a connection to the county, both county roads through the site, just for greater access for emergency vehicles and deliveries, school busing, et cetera, as opposed to a dead end. But we'll handle that later at the major subdivision. Obviously, the main issue with upzonings in this situation is public utilities, and both Indiana American Water and American Suburban have indicated they're ready to go. We obviously have development immediately to the south where all these utilities are going to be coming from. Obviously, all the floodplain area and steeper slopes are kind of accounted for here in the outlots that are being created, the areas that they are not able to build in. This area is part of the Wabash Tippecanoe Township's planning effort that is just in its early stages. We're getting our steering committees assembled for these areas. So we don't have any results to show for that yet. That's going to be some months away. So in lieu of that, the 1981 plan kicks in with its decision-making matrix, which is just a function of the aspects and obstacles to development. And it basically scores sites based on their ability to be served primarily by utilities, but also availability of major road infrastructure, railroad, et cetera, quality of the soils. So with utilities being available, this site then scores for residential and of this density caliber. So we're sort of using the comp plan's tools, existing tools, to score this site in isolation of the larger land use plan. And I could tell you, we would likely come to the similar conclusions as part of the regular planning process for the townships that we're about to do in these sites that are with an easy striking distance of utilities. They, of course, would not be scored for an agricultural environment. So given all that, and given the nearby schools and so forth, trying to cluster residential density around these activity centers, we do recommend approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Ryan, just to clarify, you did say at the beginning that you will push for, does that mean require a second entrance into this?
Well, in consultation with the other checkpoints, Township Fire especially, we would lean on to make sure public safety is accounted for in this sort of situation.
Okay.
So, yep.
Very good. Thank you.
And county schools as well for school busing, yeah.
Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Good evening, I'm Joe Bumbleberg with Ball Eggleston, and one of the wags on this board is going to say I thought he retired. So that rumor was kind of like the report of Mark Twain's death. I'm here for the petitioner in this case. The client is here, our surveyor is here, and I'm going to digress just a little. I have with me a young man by the name of John Schrader. Today, John got his letter from the State Board of Bar Examiners telling him that he had passed the bar.
Good job.
He's going to join Ball Eggleston, has been working, and now I'm bringing him around to meetings like this.
And he'll get a good night's sleep tonight.
Yeah, that's right. He'll get a good night's sleep. Remember that, Eric?
Sure do.
Oh, so do I. That was a long time ago. In any event, tonight, this is a 36.57 or 51, something in that range, request to rezone to R1 to create a subdivision of 61 lots when we get through the process. You see on your drawing there the current proposed plan. The staff says that that's not yet chiseled in granite, and that's true. But we are going to go through the subdivision process, and that would then, for those of you who have some questions, raise the questions of both access and the other things. We are on the edge of subdivision development. That's good. The schools, and I think there are 3 of them very close here, that's even better. The utility companies have said that they can service the utilities. That's really good. So clearly this piece of ground is ripe for a subdivision. The floodplain that you see drawn on that map there has already been certified and is not a problem in the subdivision process. These lots are going to be, we hope, a little bit bigger than the usual R1 lot, which, if I remember right, is about 10,000 square feet. And I looked at the drawing, and many of those are 13 and 14,000. So they're going to be a little bit bigger. The staff has said here, and is clearly, this is true, and I've done a lot of these, and this is as attractive a piece of ground, and attractive is the word the staff used, for residential development as I've seen in a long while. So we would respectfully request that you send this on to the county commissioners with a recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Mr. Bumbleberg. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the petition? Questions from the board? You have your last yellow ballot.
Question is about when we hear subdivisions. Anyone wishing to make a comment may provide us with information regarding, so we don't really hear for and against. As she writes in the comments that traditionally I think we just got mixed up.
We have 12 votes recommending approval. This will carry on to the commissioners next month.
Thank you.
Ready for variances? I move that the following requests for variances from the Unified Zoning Ordinance are not requests for use variance prohibited from consideration by ordinance and statute. Those would be BZA 2088, Purdue Research Foundation, and BZA 2089, James T. Hall, P.S. Vestern Associates Incorporated.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Director's report.
Thank you. The report was emailed out yesterday. I would comment on, I think, the last item. Just this is sort of a heads up because it'll be coming before the Plan Commission in probably different forms, maybe early next year. But the town of Otterburn has expressed an interest in joining the Plan Commission. As you know, Otterburn straddles Benton County and Tippecanoe County, and they have, for some time, commissioned Benton County to handle building permitting and zoning and planning and for the entire town. They desire to flip that and join the Plan Commission, both the Benton County side and the Tippecanoe County side, for future planning and zoning and permitting purposes. So that'll be a task for Eric and the rest of us to figure out. But the town of Shadeland, I think, you know, last year indicated an interest in doing the same. They have begun to handle their building permitting through the County Building Commission, and their intention is to eventually join the APC for planning and zoning issues as well. So when all is said and done, we'll just be one big happy county family. But that's good news. I think that's an area plan commission sort of functioning as it's supposed to. So there'll be more on Otterburn down the road.
Okay, thank you. Any citizens' comments or grievances? Hearing none.
I move to adjourn.
We're adjourned.
There you go.
Well,
It's semantic.
says, yeah, it says, anyway, with comments or provide us with information, we'll be given the opportunity.